welcome everyone who's in attendance as well as those watching online as we prepare to discuss our December the 3rd, 2019 board meeting. As we all know, today is our agenda setting meeting. There, before we get started, we will now go to we're going to do a recognition of Miss Olivia Chambers, and I'll ask both Vice Mayor Webb as well as City Director Kathy Peck to join me from the podium, as Miss Olivia is a part of Director Peck's ward. Thank you so much, Ms. Chambers. Whereas Olivia Chambers, daughter of Allison and Brad Chambers, proudly hails from Little Rock, Arkansas, and began her journey in competitive swimming at the young age of 4, breaking her first state record at 7 years old in the 500-yard freestyle. And Olivia is an alumna of the Anthony School and Mount St. Mary Academy, where she demonstrated resilience and determination, excelling in the sport despite beginning to lose her eyesight at the age of 16. And whereas Olivia's athletic prowess and commitment to excellence led her to break a 10-year-old American record in the 400-meter IM S13 with a time of 5:21.68 at the 2022 U.S. Paralympics Swimming National Championships, where she also earned 2 gold medals and was named Swimmer of the Meet. And whereas Olivia has achieved international recognition, most notably at the 2023 Para Swimming World Championships, where she earned 6 medals, 2 silver and 4 bronze, demonstrating her talent and tenacity across multiple events, including the 400-meter freestyle and the 200-meter individual medley. And whereas as a Paralympian, Olivia represented the United States with distinction at Paris 2024 Paralympic Games, bringing home a gold medal in the 400-meter freestyle S13 and 2 silver medals in the 100-meter breaststroke SB13 and 200-meter individual medley SM13, while inspiring countless individuals with her achievements. And whereas Olivia Chambers continues to balance her rigorous training schedule with academic pursuits, currently majoring in biology at the University of Northern Iowa, embodying the spirit of dedication, perseverance, and excellence both in and out of the pool. Now, I, therefore, Frank Scott Jr., Mayor of the City of Little Rock, Arkansas, do hereby proclaim November 26, 2024, Olivia Chambers Day. Want to address the board?
Hello. I'd just like to thank everyone in the state of Arkansas and city of Little Rock for supporting me. I could really feel it over in Paris, and I'm proud to represent the city.
Don't get my pants in.
Oh, we gotta get the medal.
Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you for representing the city. Yeah, and, yeah. It's awesome.
Who seat 4 is? Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's Director Peck. I guess not. Members of the board, any questions on the items? I see. Ashley, we need to get it changed. It doesn't show the names anymore. It just shows the seat number. I'm sorry, Allie. I apologize. I'm coming to you. 1 second, Director Adcock. We'll go to seat 4. I'm assuming that's Director Adcock. You're speaking to the mic? Oh, it's on you. I guess you pushed it. All right, I got it now. There you go.
Mr. Honeywell, item 2 and item number 3 are more contracts for lawn services. I would like to have a list of all of the areas that we have the lawn services and the amounts of them. And also, I would like to know how many of your employees does this eliminate?
Sorry, I'm not sure what's up with this. I won't touch it.
How many personnel does this eliminate, or have we reassigned those individuals to other areas?
I can get you the contracts where we have contractors that are assisting us with right-of-way maintenance, but these are contracts for actual street and drainage construction projects. The name of the construction company that's doing these projects just happens to have a lawn service in their title of their company.
Okay.
They aren't doing any vegetative work as part of these contracts themselves.
Okay, what are they doing for these?
One of them's a drainage project and one's, they might both be drainage projects. Hold on just a second. One's a sidewalk project and one is a drainage project.
So they do sidewalks, drainage, and the cut and cleans?
This particular contractor does no cut and clean work for us.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions on items 1 through 15? Director Miller?
I didn't have a question on item 15. We're going over the consent agenda, is that?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, that's, I had a question about item number 11. You know, I don't know where Rimmel Road is. Is there a map where you could show me? And then, I mean, we're getting this donated to us, but is there any other cost associated with this? Because I always hear, we got all these parks, we got to mow them, we got to keep them, you know. So is there any, I think it's a good idea, but is there any hidden costs that come along with this? And can you tell me where Rimmel Park is?
Absolutely. Good evening. So yes, Rimmel Park is out by the Little Rock Port. It's off of 440 and the interstate and the entrance to the Little Rock Port, right off the airport. It's on Fush, the actual creek, and has a water entry that Game and Fish built. Currently, we have a pavilion, porta potty, and some fields there. This property was brought to my attention from Brian Day with the Little Rock Port, and there's this individual that wanted to donate it, has other property in this area. I believe he's doing some donations to the port, but this one, since it abuts the entrance and all of Rimmel Park, it's between Rimmel Park and the interstate I-440. It was necessary for us to acquire it or receive the donation. The only cost is the closing cost, which will be taken into effect into our operating dollars, which is a 2% typical cost out of the actual cost of the property, appraised value.
But there any other costs associated with maintaining this?
That's a great question. No, we've looked at the property. It's all wooded, brush property that abuts the interstate. And that's another reason why we really want to keep it, is that it's wooded. It fits into our sustainability model. It fits into our buffer. We wouldn't want the 5 acres to be developed and have some kind of gas station, or I don't know what would actually be developed there. It's a long linear piece. But I'm not in the area of trying to acquire more property to maintain. So this is just a one-off one that Mr. Day, I'm thankful for him helping us get this piece of property.
Okay, thank you, because I always hear people want to give us something, but then we got to maintain it.
Yes, sir.
And so
Yes, sir.
that question, I had one about number 12 too, but I
Yes,
don't want
sir.
to be out of order or
No,
anything.
you got it.
Recognize
Why you,
me.
yeah.
Thank you. Resolution number 12. What is that? We're not involved. I read the communication, but exactly what is this and what are we the administrator of?
So this is a grant for individuals with AIDS that they can get housing through the HOPA Foundation.
It's the
And
HOPA, the HOPA funds.
the
We
HOPA
administered for the whole.
Correct, for the entire county. And so this was a letter that Director Howard would have to sign for a complaint that was filed from a gentleman.
Tell me about the complaint. That's the more interesting part of this. What is that?
He was filing a complaint of discrimination.
He,
Yes.
who's he?
I won't be able to release his name.
No, just, it's,
Director Miller, this is a 6-county grant, and this is something that happened in another county.
right.
Correct.
Yeah, I understand that from the write-up, but we're the ones who have to sign off on it?
He is. He is the sort of administrator for this area for HUD. And so when the complaint is made, it goes through the HUD process, which is set out in the Code of Federal Regulations and their operating rules. And then it's investigated and a decision is finally made. And so he signs off on that as the representative for this area. He just happens to be our housing director.
Okay, so there's no liability for the city of Little Rock on this thing? Okay, all right, thank you. And since I'm on a roll, Mayor, can I still,
Yes, sir.
I don't want to
You
be
still-
out of order.
You still got the mic.
Thank you. I just had a question about number 9. I guess it's just cheaper for us to lease things than to buy them. Is that how the cost analysis works on this? Because I saw it as 5 years and 6 figures. Seemed like we could buy something for that, but obviously there's some benefit of doing it this way. So what is it?
Yeah, we typically lease copiers and throughout the city. It's not just this one. This is just happens to be a bigger, but most of the copiers around the city are all leased, so that we can turn them over in 5 years, as opposed to owning them. And so as technology updates and they get better and improve, we can go through that process.
So we lease all our,
We lease
Correct.
most of them, yes.
okay. All right, thanks. Thanks, Mayor.
Director Hines?
Thank you, Mayor. Nick, you can, so on that one, so that this is for a new copier, right? Because it says the lease expires, so this is
Yep, we're trading it out
okay,
for a new
so
one.
we're trading up for a new one, not a new, but same copier, just a new one that's not 5 years old. Okay,
Yep.
cool. That's the only question I had about that. Mayor, I've got questions on 3, 6, 13, and 14. I guess, yeah, so it looks like 3 and 6 are public works, it looks like.
Yes, sir.
John, refresh my memory on the Lamarche Drive crosswalks and Lucky Lane. I don't remember them being on our 3/8 cent capital improvement sales tax, and I know, is this, we've got some leftover funds that this is a project we're adding, or?
Yeah, this is one that we've had multiple requests. It's, if you're familiar with Don Roberts Elementary School, This is
Okay,
right
okay,
there
that's
across the
that,
street.
okay,
Yeah,
all right.
yeah.
I do remember now, I was just trying to clarify that Lucky Lane was throwing me off as the vicinity, but if that's for Don Roberts, I'm well
Yes, sir.
aware of that. And then on our contract on number 6 with Tree Marshal and Looks Great Services of Mississippi for tree trimming services and tree removal, will this cover the still existing trees that are down in the right-of-way along Chenal Parkway where the tornado came through that the contractor did not get?
This is basically a contract that provides for on-call, so they give us a price to remove something. So yes, we could remove those trees under this contract. Yes, sir.
Okay, so this will just be on an as-needed basis?
Yes, sir. It's a
up to
not to
two- up
exceed
to- okay.
contract.
So we can get that addressed?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's all I need to know on that.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And then on 13, I guess it'd be a question for Nick, that's the audit. I'm assuming we're gonna be with Forvis again?
Yeah, so this is year 7 of the 7-year contract with them.
Okay. The other question I have is, now that you're fully installed, when do we expect the audit to be completed, and when will we have our CAFR this year, since it came out so late?
Our goal is always June, but we gotta have our component units get us their financials on time as well.
Okay, I knew that we had some delay from one of our financial units, so if there are any others other than the one we spoke about holding things up, I'd like to know so we can reach out to those units. I think it's pretty ridiculous that we have to wait till almost I guess, when do we publish our CAFR, the end of October?
The publication date was the 31st. We got the last component units financials after 5 p.m. on the 30th of September.
Okay, but yeah, I'd like to see us get back in order, having it completed in June and published. So, that's it for that. And I guess 14, Tom, that would be your question. The franchise fees and public right-of-way by utilities.
Yes.
Just
The city has a series of franchises with the various public utilities, and those items are coming forward for y'all. We've got to do it in public, and they've got to be on record for 10 days before they take effect. So this is to assure that we can continue to collect them after the 1st of January.
Okay, so this 14 goes hand in hand with that's the establishment of the franchise fees, and then there's, as we get down into the separate items, that's where the actual ordinances.
The specific ones for each
specific ones for
utility.
each one. All right. We review these every year, correct?
We use what? I'm sorry.
We review these every year,
We
correct?
review them every year. The state statute was amended several years ago, and the only way that one can be increased is by agreement with the utility or by an election. For our Little Rock, that's the case because ours were all at the maximum anyway. And we've never had an election, and we've never gotten an agreement.
Okay.
I don't know that we've ever sought an agreement. I want to be clear on that.
But these also cover our performance of them when they're working in the right-of-way and all this stuff. Because I know that Director Webb's had some direct experience with contractors for some of these folks working in the rights-of-way that are granted to them that have not been, as well as many of our constituents. Does this agreement cover those items too?
It does, Director Hines. We've had, the one that's probably given us the most difficulties deals with telecommunications. And the reason is telecommunications used to mean long distance or local service off of one phone and one company. Now it doesn't. And so we have had situations in the past because the federal government has a policy of being able to get all of these new communications tools to everybody yesterday. And so they started allowing them to put in boxes and things to be able to get the communications things working, put in towers and things of that nature. And that's what's led to a lot of the problems that we've had.
Right. As I can recall, we had some wildcatting 5G installations that weren't Verizon or AT&T. They're pretty unsightly and were just basically put up ramshackled. Are we starting to address that issue now finally, or?
We address them as they come to us one by one. We are limited in what we can do and whether to grant or deny a franchise to one of the carriers. That was taken away by the federal government probably 6 years ago. It used to be we could say, you can come here if you do A, B, C, and D. Now it's, they say, we do this service, and so they get to come there. We can tell them to do A, B, C, and D, but they'll be there before we'll have a chance to make them approve it.
Okay. Thank you.
Any more questions? Director Wyatt?
Thank you, Mayor. On item number 6, the director's already asked a question about it, but at the Oakland Fraternal Cemetery, we have trees that fall from time to time, and we've relied on the parks to cut those trees, or the park, they've spent a lot of money to cut trees. I mean, thousands of dollars to cut trees. Will this contract allow trees to be cut in Oakland Fraternal Cemetery?
No, ma'am.
No?
This doesn't have anything to do with that.
It's a totally separate contract.
But it's a contract to, how does it read?
We'll get Mr. Honeywell to answer.
It's for tree removal and tree trimming services, and that's what happens to us at Oakland. The trees die or they fall over, and either they have to spend a lot of money for a contractor to come in, or we beg parks to take care of them. And my question is, will this contract help with Oakland?
Director Wyrick, this contract is for trees that are in the public right-of-way because it's the street fund that's paying for their removal. So there's some limitations on what we can do with the funding that we have established from the street fund. However, if Parks has funding that they want to use this contractor under these contract terms, we're more than happy to work through that internally as far as if there's particular locations in the parks that they would like to hire this contractor to do that work.
Okay.
So technically, we need to have that funding come from another source if it's not within the public right away.
Okay, I thought that was a cool way to get that taken care of. We had trees laying on cemetery plots for weeks over there at the park, trying to get them taken care of. So I appreciate that. Item number 15 is supposed to be a contract for Oakland, and it doesn't have the ordinance or resolution attached. I'm wondering if there's any issue with it, because that money goes to Oakland Fraternal for their operations.
It may be just
Should be linked now,
a
Director
technical
Wyrick.
error.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
It should be linked now.
Oh, okay, okay, all right. And then I had a question on number 9. Let me go back to it. Oh, I wanted to say that AAA, I have a nephew-in-law that works at AAA. So just for disclosure, to let everybody know, I don't benefit from what he does over there, but just to let people know that there is that relationship. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions on items 16 through 19? Vice Mayor Webb.
Thank you, Mayor Scott. I'd like to ask Mr. Jordan a question, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, on item number 19, I know that staff recommended denial. And so I have 2 questions. One, why did staff recommend denial? And second, are there additional short-term rentals in that neighborhood or other residential properties that might be unavailable for homeowners or renters?
This one specifically, we recommend denial because trying to come up with recommendations for STRs has been difficult, because there's not too many metrics that we can use. I mean, we don't really live there or, so, and we have to get to 500 at some point. So we normally rely on a couple of things, and one of them is we'll do site visits and we'll look and see what the parking situation looks like. And another one is if the neighborhood sends us in correspondence, if they tell us how much they don't want it, we listen to the neighbors. In this one in particular, we recommended denial of this, and if you look back at the minutes, there were no opposition. No one showed up to the meeting that wrote in opposition. So I would assume that knowing how the planning commission is, if there is opposition to it, staff reacts to that, listens to the neighbors, and then the neighbors show up to the meeting to speak against it. I think that weighs more heavily than if no one shows up. But that was the reason why we recommended denial on that one specifically. And what was the second part of your question?
What other, are there other short-term rentals in that neighborhood?
I think there was one going to be adjacent to it that is actually being approved tonight. I believe it's the
So
top
actually,
one.
even though that 2923 Kavanaugh, for people who aren't familiar with that area, that actually it's basically next door to this property
It is.
on Spruce.
Right. Yes.
And does that property on Spruce have, I know the property on Kavanaugh has a parking lot or designated spots in the parking lot?
Yes.
Are there any spots in that parking lot for the Spruce address?
That's when at the planning commission, that's what the applicant had said, that they were going to use some of the parking at the commercial development. And there was also a property that he owned. If you go on the other side of the block, he owned some parking over there that he was going to utilize toward this.
I mean, it's kind of interesting because he does own multiple properties, and then we're hearing that there's this parking, yet when you go on that block on Spruce, you will normally see there are no parking spaces available because a lot of the people who work in those businesses that he owns are parked on Spruce. And I don't know if John's still here, but John can tell you that I emailed John every other week about that block because sometimes the cars are packed in there so tightly we can't even pick up the trash.
Right.
So I wasn't sure how many designated spots there were.
Yes, and that also weighed into our recommendation as well, the parking situation on Spruce.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions on items 20 through 23? Director Miller?
Mayor, thank you. And Tom may have addressed that when he was talking about these franchise fees. So I probably need a tutorial on that. I don't know if I can get it now, but this rate is set for Entergy and Summit at 5.2%. That's out of our hands. How does that work?
Let me answer, because I don't want you to give a tutorial, because I know you can.
No.
Essentially, we've had long-standing rates with our utility companies. We can change them. We just have to have their agreement with them. And it just takes a long process, and both sides have to agree.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Well, let me ask you this then. When Summit has gotten a 23% plus rate increase, how does that factor into what the franchise fee is going to be? Because that, to me, seems like it ought to trigger something. And so how do we address that? And
Nick will answer that.
okay.
So when their rates go up and there's more usage, that means more money in the general fund. So
I mean, it doesn't have to be more usage, right? Their just rates went up, right?
I mean, yes, but if you have usage that declines, then it offsets. But typically, if, as they do their rate increases, it'll typically mean, assuming consumers, manage and the weather, right? There's those two factors that come into play for electricity and gas, then it generally means additional revenues in the general fund for the city.
So it doesn't affect our franchise fee percentage. I mean, they're gonna charge the residents 23% more, but we stay at 5.2%.
Correct.
So there's no trigger for when they do it. I guess I'm just trying to understand. They get more money. Our franchise fees stay the same.
Right, and they have to get approval from the utility commission for their rates.
More money too.
Yeah.
If they go from $1 to $10 per unit of gas, we would get 5.2 cents for the dollar, and we would get 52 cents for the $10. So we would get the franchise fee amount increased by the rate increase, but that's the only one. The statute limits rates to 5%, but it grandfathered in rates that were already in existence.
So this rate for item number 22 at AT&T and Legacy there, that's 7.32%.
Well,
What is that?
7.32 is the percentage that began when Southwestern Bell had, and a subsidiary of AT&T, had both long distance and local service, and had a virtual monopoly on local service. There were some small companies that did that. But when you get to the long distance franchise fee, it's 0.004 cents per minute, because we found out that percentages really didn't accurately deal with the cost of such calls.
Okay. So when do we look at franchise fees? When do we have that discussion?
Director Miller, we can look at it whenever you would like to look at it. It's just a matter of us sitting down with them. But it's not just as simple as that. You also still got to get agreement upon. I'm pretty sure, and correct me if I'm wrong, the PSC still would have to be involved to some extent. Tom, is that correct or incorrect?
Not on the franchise fee, but we could not increase the franchise fee without an election or without agreement by the utility.
So when you say without an election, like sales tax election?
Yes.
Okay. All right, that's a good tutorial. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Hines?
So Tom,
I'm sorry.
So Tom, on the franchise, yes, I agree, Director Miller. Anytime they get a rate increase, it increases our coffers. We still get the same percentage, but a greater deal. So Tom, can we lower our franchise fees without an election?
We can lower them. I would suggest that you would have to lower them to 5% or lower than that, since the maximum in the statute is 5, except for the grandfathered amount. And so you couldn't go from 5.2 to 5.1 without being in excess of the statute.
Okay. But like I said, I get, we can't raise them because they're already above the limit, but we could lower them without an election.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Director Wyrick, your hand still up? If not, we're going to go to the budget presentation.
Yes, I wanted to follow up on item 21. If you all remember, Summit came to us last year and talked about they were going to ask for an increase, and I questioned them about the increase that they'd had the year before, and that's when we all got letters and phone calls about the gas rates going so high. And the gentleman that spoke to us said that the reason for that, I think, was for fuel, and it was a pass-through that Summit did not get, but it was sent straight to the customers. So in this particular case, as we're looking at franchise fees, would that pass-through be a part of the collection that we get from Summit Utilities? And then also, we've got a maximum of 2.1 million to collect from Summit. And what are we collecting from them now? I know there's a 5.2%, but then it says up to 2.1 million.
So the first question would be yes. So based on their
Yeah.
the charges, that's what it's based off of. The 2.1 is the base number.
So
We
that's
actually,
based on what the customer is billed in.
yes.
It's not what Summit collects.
Well, it's their gross receipts. So it's what they would collect the money
Okay.
when they bill. And then as far as, we'll actually talk about franchise fees here in a minute as far as the revenue goes in the 25 budget. But the 2.1 is the base, so we're saying at least 2.1 million. It can always be more. Same with energy, it has a base number and we're double that number.
Okay, so 2.1 is not the most we can collect.
Correct.
That's a base, either 5.2% or 2.1.
That's correct.
Okay, I read that wrong. Thank you for correcting me. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Director Hines, did you have a question?
Not on this, but yes, I do have a request before we head into the budget discussion. Tom and Brad and John, we've got that resurfacing going on Chenal Valley Drive where we're in a dispute with the developer over to what level of work he was supposed to return the street to. Per John this morning, the city is out there doing the resurfacing. Tom, does that preclude us from recapturing the cost of that from the developer that essentially destroyed Chenal Valley Drive in that stretch?
I don't think so. I think the developer should have developed it to the standards with their architectural committee. So if we have a number we can come up with, we can send that to the developer. But I don't know how Mr. Honeywell worked out that contract.
We've got a cost associated with what we're.
Okay, I'd like to know what that cost is when they're completed, and I still have some concerns from the pictures I sent you today that the south side of the roadway is where all the damage is, that I don't understand how you, I get you want to put extra asphalt on it, but I don't, in my layman's mind, anytime I've ever seen that kind of subsurface failure in the street, it requires cutting it out, coming in with a new base, and then resurfacing. Otherwise, we're going to have issues in the near-term future with it. But the resurfaces they did on the north side, there's not nearly as much damage. Looks good. I'm just concerned. There's several sections where we haven't done any work. There's spalling in the asphalt, and I think that's it. The other issue is there is an issue with communication, not only to myself, but it looks like intra-department, Mayor. That's why I was so mad last night. I sent a request at 3 o'clock. Don't get a response until 8:30. It's not the correct response. Come to find out 10:30 the next morning. It seemed like nobody knew what was going on. You got involved when I sent the request at 3. Please get me a response ASAP. My concern is with others, since I didn't know anything about it, I start getting calls. There's concerns whether or not we're wasting money to fix this. The whole issue was a lack of communication. That's why I was so upset. And it's just, I continue to feel like us as directors are not being told about stuff that's significant going on in our wards, and I'm tired of it. It's also, when I see lack of communication between our departments, that goes back to your leadership, Mayor, and that's why I was so mad. Everybody reports to you. We still, and that's why I'm so frustrated and mad, and all it took was getting the correct answer when somebody brought it up. Had I been given a heads up, that's the direction we're going, I would have been able to answer that. I would have been able to already have those questions answered on something that's been such a contentious issue with my constituents and taxpayer dollars on damage that a private developer should be paying to fix. That's the issue. And that's all I've got to say about that. Thank you.
Director Hines, since this is the first time you've been able to communicate, as our team shared with you, number one, this issue goes back almost a year and a half. That's my understanding. You were involved with that issue because, as you are aware, we were talking about a legal settlement. We haven't got to that point yet. There's a number of different things that has to go to that before it comes to a legal settlement. In the meantime, Brad was not aware of it at that point in time because Brad wasn't the actual director when this was all going on. We understand that. Sometimes things are not all, every issue and contract, I'm sure the former director has not shared with the current interim. That happens. You were well aware of this particular development being an issue, and we have been rectifying. I'm thankful that Public Works came up with an innovative solution and not waiting on the legal side of things. And so I'm going to refrain my comments because clearly you still are misinformed on a number of different things. There hasn't been a lack of communication, but that's what you want to share. That's fine. We'll let you continue to think that way. We will agree to disagree on the lack of communication, Mayor. Well, it's always an issue with you, so it's okay. We can agree to disagree. We're going to keep it civil because I don't want to make certain that I don't say anything. Now, everyone, we can go move forward in progress. We're going to now go towards the budget. Members of the board, first and foremost, I want to thank each and every one of you. I know it was a long few days as it relates to, not long few days, long few days as it relates to what you all heard. We took everything into account. And while what we would like to do today is what I've heard from you all leading up to this discussion is that everyone would like to kind of get to the really kickstart the Thanksgiving and gratefulness season. So what we would like to do today is to go over the presentation. If there are just some questions that have to be asked, we will answer that. But leave the detailed questions till next Tuesday, so everyone has a handout. And we've emailed Director Wire. Can you confirm that you received the email? Did she get it?
She should have, yes.
Okay. She received the email with this document. We know you're away right now, Director Wyrick. And so what we'd like to do is go over the presentation. If there's any pertinent questions at the end of the presentation, great. But what I heard from you, that many of you all would like to kind of be out of here by 5 because y'all got some other things y'all are trying to do for Thanksgiving. And then we can kind of go into the detail on Tuesday. And also, if there's anybody wants to send an email or a phone call to myself, Emily, or to Nick, please feel free, and we can get those questions answered before Tuesday. It's not going to be on the agenda for a vote on Tuesday. We want to make certain there's enough time to digest everything. If there's some tweaks we need to make, we will do that. We also have heard from you all that y'all want to get to the holiday season as it relates to the season as well in December. That being stated, we know that we are not scheduled to meet on December the 31st. I believe there's some things going on within the board on December the 30th. Our last board meeting is on December the 17th, and we want to try to figure out if we can get it done then. If not, that's fine. We can stay here as long as possible throughout the end of the year, and we're prepared for that as well. I'll cut across the field to share this budget. Number one, we're grateful to continue to present to you, myself and Emily and Nick, a balanced budget, a budget that takes in many of your concerns, many of our concerns as we propose it to you from what we heard, and Nick will share what we heard at the last meeting and how we've incorporated what we've heard. We also prioritize affordable housing, homelessness, and public safety, and many other items that you'll see. We do know, just to cut across the field, there will be, this takes into account police, fire raises, as well as raises for our non-uniform employees, which we're grateful to be able to provide raises in this scenario in this season. We definitely would always want to do more than what we're providing, but we will be providing that from that particular standpoint as we move forward. And of course, other expenses as it relates to health insurance, which is a significant impact to the budget. With that being said, Mr. Nick.
All right, thank you, Mayor, Board of Directors. So first and foremost, before I get started, the development of the budget doesn't happen without first my team. So Budget Manager Gary Chapman's with me, but the budget team, as well as the rest of the finance team, helps with the preparation of the budget, and then all the departments. There's a lot of work that goes into the development of the annual budget, and so we really appreciate all their work. All right, so as we develop the budget, we always start with the must-do statements and from the policy statements from the Board of Directors, as well as the should-do statements. So those start the foundation of the budget. We also look at the vision, or core values, sorry, and incorporate those as well when we're developing the budget. So some of the factors, and this was in the primer that I previously gave to you, that impacted the budget as we were developing it was the sales tax revenue being below budget so far through this year, ongoing union negotiations, the compensation study that's ongoing for non-uniform employees, the elevated interest rates when we started, but then the beginning of the cutting cycle at the federal level, and then the impacts of inflation and what it means to both the city as well as our staff and the residents. And then as we were doing the budget, we're in the middle of the election, so there's election uncertainty and geopolitical activity. All right, so one of the other things we expect in the budget, just given the economic state, was incremental revenue growth in 2025. We knew there'd be increased costs for health insurance and risk management. And then a big important thing is the ending of federal stimulus from COVID. And the result of those is some of those activities that we paid for from COVID money, we need to include in our operational budget. So what was the feedback we got from you? So when we had the budget hearings, some of the feedback was affordable housing, homelessness, parks and recreation services and facility maintenance, and ditch clearings and maintenance were primary topics. So what did we do in the budget? As the mayor mentioned, we focused on public safety funding, and that ensures a safe city, which is one of your policy statements. Affordable housing, which again is ensuring a safe city, homelessness, ensuring a safe city, sustainability efforts, which are basic city services, and then zoo and golf funding for quality of life. So we'll get into general fund revenues. So the total budget for 2025 is $263,108,099, which is about a 5.5 increase, a little over 2% from the amended budget for 2024. So the individual key components of the budget, so property tax. So we have an overall increase from our forecast for property tax of 3.63%. That factors in information we received from the county as far as the values that they have at that point in time as they continue to work to ensure all the values are calculated, which was 3.52. So we feel like our number of 3.63 is in line with where they were at in the valuation cycle. So sales and use tax, we forecast an increase from our current forecast at 0.83%. When we originally did the budget, the forecast at that point in time, it would have been a 0.75% increase. And so on the state turnback, it's lower than what our forecast would be based on our population, because one, in the current year, we've received less than what our calculation would be. And then there is a state law that allows them to use some of that money for cybersecurity efforts. So franchise fees. So these are all the franchises that we have. So we have 8 different franchises that we charge, whether it's the electric utilities, water, wastewater, gas, cable TV, fiber. And so we're forecasting a 6.03% increase in that, primarily driven by the gas utility, as well as electricity, and the rate increases that they have there. So intergovernmental revenue, this is turnback revenue that we receive from the state that goes to pay for our pensions for police and fire. So as mentioned, the budget for 2025, including our transfers in, is $263 million, which is a 5.5 increase or 2.12% above the 24 amended budget. And it is $3 million above, or 1.16 above the 2023 actuals. And then this chart just shows the major revenue sources for the general fund. And you'll see that 83% of our overall general fund revenue comes from our sales and use tax, property tax, and franchise fees. All right, personnel costs. So in the budget, we have the continuation of stepping grade progression for our police officers, firefighters, our ASME and union eligible employees, and then our 911 communications positions. So for police uniform positions, they're still in negotiations. The recruitment incentive will stay the same as it currently stands. And then we have increases into the closed pension plan, which we'll talk about shortly. On the fire side, it's still in negotiations, but increases as well for the closed pension. And then for our non-uniform employees, we have a 1.75% increase for all non-uniform employees. Health insurance, so we're fully insured with Cigna. There's a net increase of $1.1 million that's included in our personnel costs for 2025. The pension rates will stay the same for lot fee in the city. And then most of the other pension rates from APERS will stay the same except for the district judge, which jumps quite a bit. And then we did do a reduction to the non-uniform defined benefit plan, which has been going back and forth between fully funded. So the closed police pension plan, so we see a $217,000 increase, primarily driven from increased property values. So there's the $1 million that is dedicated to both police and fire. So the police will receive the $217,000, and then the fire will receive $347,000 in this next year, additional revenue. So we'll increase our OPEB contribution for COBRA and retirees by $154,000, and then workers' comp will increase by $132,000. All right, so general fund staffing. So there's a net increase of 12 positions. So we moved from 1,768 employees to 1,780 employees in the budget. So there's some restoration of positions in the zoo. And then we have 3 positions that we'll talk about shortly for homelessness efforts. On the special projects and grants, there's an addition of 3 positions. There's a restoration and correction of 1 position that was left off last year, and so we fixed that. And then for our enterprise funds, no changes in FTEs. So net increase of 15 across the city to 2280 as far as full-time positions. All right, and this chart just shows the breakout of our FTE distribution. So we have our general government, which has 302 employees, which is spread across several different departments, whether it's finance, OEA, IT, HR. That's all within the general government. And then the services that are provided externally are shown in different slices of the pie. So overall for the general fund, there's a net increase of about $5.2 million from the 2024 original budget. It includes salary increases for police, fire, our 1.75% for our non-uniform personnel, and then as well as increased health and insurance costs. So the fleet allocation, so parts and sublet services will increase approximately $448,000 from 2024 to 2025. However, fuel costs will go down because we've seen a decrease in overall fuel prices. Our funding for our outside agencies are not changing for 2025. And then our debt service on our short-term notes declines because we paid off the 2019 note in 2024. And so it's a decline of about 1.2 million. So getting into expenditures. So the overall expenditures for the general fund are $263,108,099. It's a balanced budget. As mentioned previously, the net increase in personnel is $5.2 million. And then our vacancy savings increased from $7 million to $11 million in 2025, so $4 million increase. So what were the key changes in personnel? So we had our salary increases, health insurance, and positions added at $8.2 million. Then we had the 3 homeless positions, which added about $321,000. 2 zoo positions, which $144,000. Changes in the clothes, police, fire, and non-uniform pension plans about $200,000. The COBRA at $154,000, and changes in workers' comp at $132,000. All right, so fleet, so $1.3 million reduction in fuel costs across the city, $270,000 in additional labor costs, $80,000 in additional vehicle storage costs. No change in equipment maintenance charges. So some of the other highlights. So as I mentioned before, we're adding 3 positions for our homelessness efforts, 2 engagement specialists and vehicles, as well as 1 new data analyst position to assist with homelessness efforts. We're adding $50,000 to the land bank funding. That's on our special projects, and then $80,000 for continuum of care services.
And before we go, members of the board, a lot of this was one things that both Kevin and Matt DeSalvo, who's our chief homeless officer, along with, I know many of you attended some meetings with other cities that have continued to excel, and so a lot of this is in line with that. So just want to make that connection in regards to homelessness.
All right, so then we continue investing in public safety and ensuring a safe city. So there's over $809,000 in additional funding for public safety equipment and technology. And then we have $110,000 for our sustainability investment for operations and maintenance of the solar facility. On a quality of life investment, we have $60,000 for concession and pro shop at the golf course, which is expected to generate $110,000 in additional revenue. So it's net revenue positive of $50,000. And then we restored 2 positions at the zoo, the general curator and landscape worker. All right, this slide shows the general fund debt service, which is our short-term notes, and the $2.9 million roughly that is expected to be expended in 2025. So our outside agency funding, as I mentioned previously, did not increase. It stayed flat from 2024 to 2025. Our total transfers out will decrease by $7.6 million from the 2024 amended budget, and increase $42,717 from the original 2024 budget to $12.6 million. Part of that increase is due to, or decrease from 2024's amended budget to 2025 is additional funding, one-time funding that we use to fund our ARPA projects from lost public sector revenue. And so that increased our transfers out significantly in the current year. And then our transfer to the street fund for parking enforcement stays the same, and then our contingency allocation increases based off of our revenue. So here is our list of general fund special projects. So you'll see on here the additional funds for the land bank of $50,000 and the additional funding of $80,000 for our continuum of care program. You'll also see on the next slide, $15,000 was added for sister cities for their efforts that they continue to do. And so overall, the net increase in the special projects transfers out was about $15,000 from the adopted budget of 2024. Grant match transfer stays the same at $550,000. Our general fund expenditures by category outlines the different expenditure classifications. So You'll see the big increase in personnel from the amended budget to the proposed budget, and that factors in our vacancy savings is included in that, and has been allocated to the department. So moved from the vacancy savings line 11, into the personnel, where the departments, based on the savings that they've occurred, as well as reductions in budget related to the ARPA funding that was transferred over to our special project fund. So here are the expenditures by department. And so OEA includes, so executive administration, the general and employee benefits includes our transfers out, as well as the general benefits for employees. Again, the total budget is $263 million. All right, so this goes into a little bit more detail about the general and employee benefits and executive administration and the changes overall there in the budget. And then this is all the other divisions where most of the employees in executive administration are housed. All right, and then I included the housing and neighborhood programs budget, primarily because of the increase and the emphasis from the board about homelessness efforts and the addition of the 3 positions as part of the budget, and then the 2 additional positions that were added during the year. So our other funds, so getting into our street fund and our enterprise funds. So street fund budget is $26.4 million for revenue for 2025, which is an increase of $713,000 from the amended budget for 2024 and $313,000 from the adopted budget. So the street fund is also balanced at $26.4 million. And then our transfers out for the street fund increased by $416,000 from the adopted budget, primarily driven by administrative overhead costs. Waste disposal fund is at $26.5 million. This fund is also balanced for revenue and expenditures. And then transfers out for the waste disposal fund go up by nearly $1.2 million to pay for almost their full costs of overhead. Fleet service balanced again at $18.4 million in revenues, which are offset by expenditures, which are charged out to the other departments of the city, as well as some of our partner component units. Vehicle storage fund is about $2.5 million for 2025 as far as revenues go, which is about a $187,000 increase from our 2024 adopted budget. On the expenditure side, it's about $2.3 million. So this one is anticipated to have net income of $161,000. Parking garage has revenue of $3.3 million, which is an increase of $121,000 from 2024's adopted budget. And expenditures are expected to be $1.4 million. So just in summary, all funds but vehicle storage and parking garage are balanced. The vehicle storage and parking garage are expected to generate combined a little over $2 million in net income, which is all restricted for their usage. And so this chart kind of shows the breakout of the different funds of the city. So 77% of our budget is the general fund, which is our primary operating fund for the city. Combined for governmental funds, where it's about 85% of the budget is between the general fund and the street fund. On the expenditure side, general fund 78%, street funds 8%, so you're looking at 86% of your expenditures are from governmental funds. All right, future steps. So in developing the budget and preparing a balanced budget, some topics came up for ways to generate additional revenues for the city, or look at additional revenues for the city, as well as to accomplish goals that the board has communicated. And so one of the items that we intend to do in the first quarter, or from now through the first quarter of 2025, is to review our city facilities and property and determine what our true needs. So we have a lot of property, a lot of buildings, a lot of things that need maintenance across the city that have deferred maintenance. And really looking at them as far as need, usage, and what would be the best usage for some of those pieces of property or buildings that we have. So we could end up coming to you and recommending that we sell or lease facilities that we could use to fund deferred maintenance. We could do public-private partnerships. And this has been a process that's worked well across the world. And as far as the U.S. goes, Atlanta's been doing this with great results. A number of other cities, including the city of Austin, is researching this. Harris County's done it as well. So there is lots of opportunities there. As I mentioned, we'll bring forth a recommendation in the first quarter of 2025. And then one of the other future steps is ensuring that we take care of all of our employees, whether they're in uniform or not, and evaluate how we implement the compensation study going forward. Any questions?
Any pertinent questions, members of the board? Director Computers?
Nick, you did a great job. I couldn't read it that fast. Could you and the mayor tell me how we're going to, as I've studied this next week, what we're going to do in a week to answer questions? What the protocol is going to be? This is just a general.
Sure. If you got any questions, please send them to myself, to Emily, to Nick, or all of us at the same time. We'll all be, since we're all preparing it, we'll be discussing it. So it'd probably be easier if you just send an email to the three of us. That way we can get you rapid fire answers. Again, we do want to share one of the main goals was knowing that we only had very marginal increase in growth, right at 1% or less than 1%. The main priority was taking care the balancing act of the priority of always taking care of our residents, but also making certain that we take care of our employees who are doing the work for our residents. And so that's the reason why we prioritized, and we are still in negotiations, so I want to make certain that Sheridan is staring at me to make sure I don't say anything I don't need to in the midst of negotiations. But we are having some negotiations with police and fire. I think we heard that we made a major headway with police today. We're grateful, Chief Hilton and Sheridan, for that major headway. Chief Hilton may not even, are you aware of the major headway? Okay, he's not hiding. Great, major headway there. So that's very helpful to our budget as well. And so again, as we cut across the grass to the field, is to make certain we had the police and fire raises and raises for all non-uniform employees, and still prioritize affordable housing, homelessness, and public safety. And that's essentially what you've seen is the new funding that we had left over after a 7% increase into our health care. And everyone, please understand that our health care represents close to 25% of our budget, our personnel budget. And so when you add that, there's not a lot of room once you take care of the police, fire, and non-uniform employees, but we still were able to prioritize affordable housing, homelessness, and public safety with the new funding. As Nick has shared, will come in the first quarter of 2025. There may be some buildings that aren't getting the full use that we are paying for right now that we may need to sell or lease to create more opportunities for deferred maintenance and or other programming that you all have shared in the meeting and our budget discussions. Again, as Nick has shared, this is something that you're seeing across the nation right now. Nick was just sharing with us earlier, Atlanta was able to build a new fire station at no cost because the developer, which I saw a brief news blurb about it, but the developer put some condos on top of a fire station. And so and the developer wanted a fire station right there for it's pretty interesting. So we get opportunity to kind of positively disrupt what we've always done, or not necessarily always done, but think about it in a new way. So there may be some properties that we put up for sale or lease. As I see Joe, there's no developer that's been calling us. This is a new idea. So we don't want those kind of FOIAs. That's not happening from that standpoint. But this is something we got to look at as far as long-term deferred maintenance of that. So to answer your question again, is just to send us all an email. or call us. If you call one, we're going to call each other. So yeah.
But, and then the second part of my question is if I have some idea about some way I want to rearrange this, but how, do I just present it to you or do I send it to all the board members at the same time?
I would present to being that Emily and I are the one co-preparing it, because it's a lot of work in here to do this. So,
It's got to be revenue new. I mean, it's got to be, if I take it from someplace, but if I say there's $10 here and I want to spend $10 in a different way, but it's done on the same thing.
If I can make a recommendation, I know we want to have transparency, but also know that statements are not understood necessarily the first time, particularly in emails. When you send it to the mayor and Emily and Nick initially, that gives them the chance not only to discuss it, but to refine it before it's sent to the board. If you send it all to the board at one time, that's a meeting, and you've got to send it to all the media.
Right. And you're correct. Just call. What I would say is just call us, because if you send it out, it may be a reason why we can't do it, and we want to be able to make sure you have it from that standpoint. But I will say is the budget is very tight. And we made a conscious decision on getting employees raises. And so but yes, just call us and we'll figure it out. But what I was trying to get to is there are some things that I know you've discussed, Director Capurius, if I'm channeling you, and I know that's not a good thing because it may not be correct. But if I'm channeling you, like we're going to do in the first quarter of 25 when we review some of our properties, I think you mentioned something in the last meeting of way of kind of rearranging some things. I do think because of that particular area, we need to plan for that, and that's not as quick as going through the budget. But I do think that type of idea is something that we could amend the budget later on, and or it may be a management function. May be a management function that if that is a wheel that Emily and I think we can figure that out, because we want to always make certain that everybody is cohesive from the, I've learned over the past 5 years that it's better to be cohesive than not. So
I just want to know the rules of the game.
Well, that's why I'm over it. That's why I'm overstating it too, because I know how you think.
But we're not bringing it for a vote next week.
Yes, we're not bringing it for a vote next week at all. But those type of ideas, and another third thing, Director Capurius, because I know we brought this up, and I think even Director Hines, I don't know if you saw, paid attention to, we did include the pro shop dollars in there. Do you see that? With that being stated, one thing we're going to look into, again, review, is privatization of the golf courses. Not saying we'll do that, but we got to look into it. Second thing, as it relates to Rebsamen, John Leland, if you'll start looking at the estimates on fixing that issue that Director Capurius and I were discussing at the last board meeting, because we may utilize.
Is this the sinkhole, the hole 13?
Hole 13.
That's in the bond funds that y'all passed last week.
Those type of things we can get addressed. That's, I guess, what I wanted to share with you. We're going to come back there, and we shared this at the last meeting. There are certain things, certain one-time funding measures that Emily and I are going to come back to you and say, hey, if the sinkhole was one of them, we would have said, okay, we got to fix it. We're going to have to fix it sooner or later, so let's use some emergency funding for that. We're going to come back. Vice Mayor Webb has shared something as well, so we'll come back to that. Again, what we would like, a lot of that takes review. It takes engineering. We would like to come back to the board first quarter 2025. Nick? All right. It is 5:15. Any other questions before meeting adjourned? Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. To our team members, we appreciate you, and happy Thanksgiving.